When a young barista's political intolerance leads her to publicly refuse service to a MAGA hat-wearing customer, she unknowingly ignites a powder keg of consequences. Her self-righteous stand becomes a lesson in humility when she discovers her target is the coffee shop's new owner, forcing a confrontation between progressive activism and workplace professionalism. James Richardson adjusted his red MAGA hat and straightened his navy blazer as he approached the Bean Scene coffee shop, its early morning aroma wafting through the crisp autumn air. At 54, he'd built a successful chain of small businesses across 3 states, and this struggling cafe was his latest investment. He hadn't told anyone yet, not even the staff, that he was the new owner. First, he wanted to see how the place ran on a typical morning. Through the window, he could see the morning rush in full swing. Young professionals tapped away on laptops, while college students lined up for their caffeine fix. Behind the counter, a petite barista with purple-streaked hair and multiple piercings orchestrated the morning chaos with practiced efficiency. Her name tag read, Sarah. James pulled open the door, joining the line of customers. He couldn't help but notice how Sarah's demeanor shifted the moment she spotted his hat. Her friendly smile vanished, replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. She whispered something to her coworker, who glanced at James and quickly looked away. The customer ahead of him received their drink with a cheerful, "Have a great day," from Sarah. But when James stepped up to the counter, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone," Sarah announced loudly, holding up her phone to film him. "And I don't serve fascists." The cafe fell silent. Several customers pulled out their phones, sensing drama about to unfold. James maintained his calm demeanor, though his heart raced slightly at the confrontation. "Excuse me?" he asked politely. "I'd just like to order a coffee." "Your hat makes people feel unsafe," Sarah declared, her voice rising. "This is supposed to be a safe space. We don't welcome hate here." Other employees shifted uncomfortably behind her, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. A few customers muttered under their breath, some nodding in agreement with Sarah, others shaking their heads in disapproval. James remained steady, his voice level. "I understand you have strong feelings, but I'm just a customer requesting service like anyone else." "Not in that hat." "You're not," Sarah sneered, still recording. "I'm live streaming this, by the way. Let everyone see what kind of person tries to bring their MAGA hate into our progressive space." Little did she know, her live stream was documenting exactly the kind of behavior James had hoped to evaluate in his new business. He glanced up at the security cameras in the corners, knowing they were capturing every moment of this interaction. Sarah's live stream continued rolling as she raised her voice even louder. "Everyone, this is what we're dealing with. Another entitled MAGA supporter trying to force his way into our safe space." She waved her phone dramatically, panning it across the now-silent cafe. "I'm not serving hate today or any day." James maintained his composed stance at the counter, one hand resting casually on his leather briefcase. "I understand you're the shift supervisor," he said, noting her position badge, "but I'm simply requesting the same service as any other customer. I'm happy to pay extra for the inconvenience." "Oh, typical," Sarah scoffed, her purple hair bouncing as she shook her head. "Thinking you can just buy your way through life. Let me guess. Straight white male, probably inherited daddy's business." She looked directly into her phone. "Everyone watching. This is what privilege looks like." Behind Sarah, her co-workers Tyler and Madison exchanged worried glances. Tyler took a small step backward, busying himself with the espresso machine, while Madison pretended to organize cups. The morning rush line had grown to nearly a dozen people, with several customers recording the scene on their phones. "Actually," James replied calmly, pulling out his own phone and opening the camera, "I worked my way up from nothing." "But that's not relevant to ordering coffee, is it?" He gestured to the menu board. "Medium Americano, please." "Did you not hear me?" Sarah's voice cracked with frustration as none of her co-workers joined her protest. We don't serve racist MAGA supporters here. This is a progressive establishment. She turned to Tyler. Back me up on this. Tyler raised his hands defensively. Sarah, maybe we should just… Unbelievable. Sarah cut him off, turning back to her live stream. This is exactly how fascism spreads. People staying silent while hate walks right through the front door. She pointed accusingly at James. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police. You're creating a hostile environment. An elderly regular customer at a corner table spoke up. The only hostile person I see is you, young lady. Several others nodded in agreement, while more phones emerged to capture the scene. The security cameras in each corner continued their silent recording as Sarah's face flushed red with anger. I don't need anyone's approval to take a stand, she declared, though her voice wavered slightly as she noticed her co-workers' continued reluctance to support her. This is about principles, about fighting back against everything that MAGA represents. James simply stood there, phone recording, as Sarah's tirade continued. He noticed how the morning regulars were shaking their heads, how the line of waiting customers grew increasingly restless, how Sarah's fellow employees seemed to shrink away from her performance. Every moment was another piece of evidence, though Sarah remained oblivious to the professional hole she was digging for herself. Sarah aggressively tapped her phone screen, angling it to capture more reactions from the growing crowd. Everyone watching needs to see this, she declared, her voice rising higher. We've got over 200 viewers now. The internet is going to know exactly what kind of establishment refuses to bend to MAGA intimidation. Several customers in line pulled out their own phones, but their cameras weren't aimed at James. They were recording Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior. An elderly woman in a blue cardigan who'd been quietly sipping her tea near the window approached the counter, her weathered hands gripping her cane firmly. Young lady, she said, addressing Sarah, I've been coming here every morning for 8 years, and I've never seen such unprofessional behavior. This gentleman hasn't done anything wrong. Sarah whirled around, her face flushed. You don't understand. This is about taking a stand. Every coffee shop should be a safe space. She gestured wildly with her free hand while keeping her phone trained on James. If we don't resist now, they'll think they can just walk in anywhere. Madison, the junior barista, nervously approached Sarah. The line's getting really long, she whispered. Maybe we should just… Don't you dare undermine me, Sarah snapped, causing Madison to retreat behind the espresso machine. I'm the shift supervisor here. James calmly pulled out a small notebook and began writing. Could I get your full name, please, Sarah? And your employee ID number? His measured tone seemed to further agitate her. Oh, now you're threatening me? Sarah's live stream commentary grew more frantic. Everyone watching, he's trying to intimidate a female service worker. This is exactly what they do. She backed away from the counter, bumping into Tyler, who nearly dropped a stack of cups. The morning rush customers began to disperse, some shaking their heads as they headed for the exit. A businessman in a charcoal suit paused by the door, holding up his phone. I've got the whole thing recorded, sir, he called out to James, including when she first refused service. Email's on my card if you need it. He placed his business card on a nearby table before leaving. Sarah's live stream comments grew increasingly hostile. See how they stick together? The whole patriarchal system protecting itself. Well, I'm not backing down. She jabbed her finger toward James's MAGA hat. That symbol of hate has no place in this coffee shop. Actually, came a new voice from the entrance, that's not your decision to make. The assistant manager, Rita, stood in the doorway, having arrived for her shift early after receiving concerned texts from Tyler. Her face was stern as she surveyed the chaos that had engulfed her usually peaceful morning coffee shop. The security cameras continued their silent vigil as Sarah's moment of reckoning approached, though she remained too caught up in her self-righteous performance to notice the shifting tide. Her live-stream audience had indeed grown, but not for the reasons she imagined. Rita's appearance seemed to energize Sarah rather than give her pause. "Perfect timing!" Sarah exclaimed, turning her live stream toward the assistant manager. "Rita, you need to back me up here. We can't let hate symbols intimidate our workers." Rita's expression remained stern as she moved behind the counter, surveying the scattered cups, backed-up orders, and clustering of uncomfortable customers. "Sarah, end the live stream. Now!" "But the resistance!" Sarah started, her phone still broadcasting. "End it," Rita commanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. Several viewers commented with protest emojis before Sarah reluctantly lowered her phone, though she didn't stop recording. Outside, 3 of Sarah's activist friends had arrived, carrying hastily made signs reading, "No hate in our coffee," and "Resist fascism." They pressed their faces against the storefront windows, adding to the spectacle. A local news van pulled into the parking lot, its antenna extending skyward. James maintained his composed stance at the counter, methodically documenting each new development in his notebook. "I notice you've halted all customer service," he observed calmly. "How many orders would you estimate have been delayed or cancelled in the past 20 minutes? "Don't answer him!" Sarah snapped at Madison, who had been counting the abandoned orders. "He's just gathering ammunition for his right-wing troll army." She paced behind the counter, her anxiety mounting as she noticed more customers filming. "Everyone here is complicit in enabling fascism. This is supposed to be a progressive space." Tyler, the youngest barista, nervously raised his hand. "Sarah, we're losing the morning rush. That's like our biggest revenue period." "Revenue?" Sarah scoffed, her voice cracking. "This is about human rights, about standing up to oppression." She grabbed a stack of cups and demonstratively pushed them away from the service area. "We're not serving anyone until he leaves." A small business owner from the next shop over, who relied on her morning coffee runs, spoke up from the growing crowd. "I've known James for years through the Chamber of Commerce. He's one of the most reasonable people." "Of course the capitalist class sticks together," Sarah interrupted, her face reddening further. "This is exactly what's wrong with the system." Rita stepped forward, phone in hand. "I've just gotten off the phone with corporate. They're very interested in this situation." She turned to James, recognition flickering in her eyes, especially given recent ownership changes. Sarah dismissed this with a wave. "Corporate doesn't scare me. They need to know we won't normalize hate in our workspace." She grabbed her phone again, finger hovering over the live stream button. "I'm calling in more supporters. We'll show them what organized resistance looks like." The elderly woman in the blue cardigan had remained, now shaking her head sadly. "Dear, you might want to check the new store ownership listing by the register. The one that was updated last week." Sarah's hand froze over her phone as Rita pointed to the framed document on the wall, recently updated with the coffee shop's new owner's name, James Morrison. Sarah's face drained of color as she stared at the ownership document, her phone slipping slightly in her trembling hand. The live stream continued to buzz with notifications as more activists arrived outside, pressing signs against the windows and chanting slogans that now seemed to echo hollow through the tense cafe. This has to be a mistake," she stammered, backing away from the register. Her phone pinged repeatedly as local activist groups shared her earlier posts, completely unaware of the developing situation inside. James calmly pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Yes, this is James Morrison. We're going to need additional security at the Bean Scene location." He paused, maintaining steady eye contact with Sarah. "Yes, there's a gathering that's disrupting normal business operations. Please document everything upon arrival." The morning rush crowd had thinned considerably, with only a few customers remaining to witness the unfolding drama. Those who stayed filmed quietly from their tables, their phones capturing Sarah's transformation from righteous crusader to dawning horror. You can't just come in here and take over our safe space." Sarah's voice cracked as she tried to rally. "This was supposed to be a progressive establishment." Rita stepped forward, her manager's badge catching the morning light. "It still is, Sarah. But progressive values include treating everyone with respect, regardless of their political beliefs. Something you seem to have forgotten." Outside, the crowd had swelled to nearly 30 people. Some carried hastily made signs, while others live-streamed through the windows, creating their own commentary about the fascist invasion of their local coffee shop. The news van's crew had begun setting up equipment. Madison, who had been quietly counting the lost orders, spoke up. "We've missed 47 transactions in the last 30 minutes. That's just the morning rush numbers. The financial impact of today's disruption will be fully documented," James noted, adding another line to his notebook. Along with all social media posts encouraging harassment of this business and its customers. Sarah's activist friends had managed to squeeze inside, but their triumphant entrance faltered as they read the room. The elderly woman in the blue cardigan gave them a disapproving headshake as she sipped her coffee. The last order filled before Sarah's confrontation began. "Your shift is suspended. Effective immediately," Rita announced, holding out her hand for Sarah's employee badge. "We'll need to review all social media posts made during work hours as per company policy." "But I was standing up for what's right," Sarah protested, though her voice had lost its earlier conviction. The hashtag #ResistBeingSeen continued to trend locally, each notification now serving as evidence against her. The growing crowd outside remained oblivious to the ownership revelation, their chants becoming increasingly aggressive. James documented each new arrival, every social media post, and each moment of business disruption with methodical precision. The morning sun highlighted the empty chairs where regular customers should have been enjoying their daily coffee, a silent testimony to the cost of unchecked activism gone wrong. A new voice cut through the tension as Maria Rodriguez, a regular customer known for her morning Americano, stepped forward from her usual corner table. "I've been coming here for 3 years," she announced, her voice steady and clear. "And I've never seen such unprofessional behavior from any employee." Sarah's head snapped toward Maria, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't about you. You don't understand what's at stake here. He's wearing a MAGA hat in our space." "I understand perfectly," Maria replied, setting her cup down with a deliberate click. "You assume because I'm Latina, I must agree with your politics, that I must hate anyone who thinks differently. But that's not how a functioning society works." Several customers in line began gathering their belongings and heading for the door, shaking their heads in disgust. A middle-aged woman in a business suit paused at the exit. "I'll be calling corporate about this. Political discrimination is still discrimination." Kevin Chen, the assistant manager, emerged from the back office, his face tightening as he absorbed the scene. The crowd outside had grown larger, their signs now blocking the morning sunlight through the front windows. "Sarah, step away from the register. I'll handle the customers." "No!" Sarah planted herself firmly behind the counter. "You don't get to silence my protest." Her phone continued streaming, comments flooding in with encouraging emojis and calls for resistance. She glanced at them for support, reading aloud. "See? Everyone agrees this is a brave stand against fascism." Maria stepped closer to the counter. "Brave? You're refusing service to a paying customer while hiding behind a mob. Where I come from, that's called bullying. You're betraying your people," Sarah shot back, her voice rising. "How can you defend someone who—" "My people," Maria's eyebrows rose. "My people believe in treating others with respect, even when we disagree. Maybe especially when we disagree." More phones appeared among the remaining customers, recording Sarah's increasing agitation. The other baristas had backed away from the counter, some pretending to clean already spotless surfaces, others watching with obvious discomfort as their morning shift devolved into chaos. Kevin tried to edge past Sarah toward the register, but she shifted to block him, nearly knocking over a display of travel mugs. Outside, a local news van had pulled into the parking lot, its satellite dish extending skyward as curious onlookers pointed their phones through the windows. "This is my space!" Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. "We built this community. You can't just come in here with your hate symbols and—" "Sarah," Kevin interrupted firmly, "you need to stop. Now." But Sarah was already typing furiously on her phone, rallying more supporters. The hashtag #DefendBeanScene began trending locally, drawing more activists to the plaza. Nearby businesses were calling the property management, complaining about the growing crowd blocking their entrances. Through it all, James stood calmly documenting every word, every post, every person who entered or left. The security cameras whirred quietly overhead, capturing Sarah's repeated attempts to prevent her co-workers from serving customers. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty cafe tables. Tables that should have been full of morning regulars, now turned away by the spectacle of unchecked activism gone wrong. The first news crew arrived just as Sarah's live stream hit 5,000 viewers. Channel 7's reporter, Lisa Chen, immediately began interviewing witnesses outside the bean scene, her microphone catching snippets of conversation from the growing crowd. Several customers who had fled the scene earlier returned, phones in hand, eager to share their recordings of Sarah's meltdown. "I got the whole thing," said Derek Thompson, a college student showing his footage to the reporter. "She started harassing him the moment he walked in, just because of his hat. Wouldn't even let other employees help him." Inside, Kevin had finally managed to access the security system's admin panel. The footage from the past 2 hours played across his tablet screen, clearly showing Sarah blocking other baristas from the register whenever conservative-appearing customers approached. 3 separate incidents captured her refusing service to elderly customers wearing American flag pins and another wearing a veteran's cap. Sarah's social media activity, projected onto the news van's monitor, revealed a disturbing pattern. "Planning to make Bean Scene a fascist-free zone," read one post from the previous week. "Time to take direct action against MAGA customers," declared another. Maria Rodriguez had stayed behind, methodically writing out her statement for the property management company. "As a daily customer, I've witnessed Ms. Sullivan's behavior becoming increasingly aggressive toward anyone she perceives as conservative," she noted, her handwriting neat and deliberate. Today's incident was not isolated, but rather the culmination of ongoing discrimination. The hashtag #JarBoycottBeanScene began trending locally, accompanied by clips from Sarah's own live stream. Comments flooded in, but not the supportive ones she'd expected. Absolutely unprofessional. Politics have no place in customer service. This is why people can't have civil discussions anymore. She's the one spreading hate, not the customer. Competing coffee shops seized the moment. Across the street, Morning Brew hastily put up a sign. "All viewpoints welcome here. Free coffee for new customers today." The Bean Scene's online rating plummeted as 1-star reviews poured in. Regular customers posted about finding new morning coffee spots, citing the toxic atmosphere Sarah had created. Behind the counter, other employees quietly removed their name tags, some typing out resignation letters on their phones. Several protesters outside now carried signs reading, "End political discrimination" and "Respect all customers." The local Conservative Student Alliance announced plans for a peaceful sit-in, while business journalists began calling the corporate office, asking about recent ownership changes. Throughout the chaos, James maintained his composed silence, occasionally glancing at his watch as if waiting for something. He continued documenting everything with his phone, paying particular attention to Sarah's increasingly frantic attempts to rally support on social media. The evidence mounted with each passing minute, but he seemed in no hurry to reveal his trump card. HR consultant Janet Walsh arrived at 2 p.m., her leather portfolio tucked under her arm as she navigated through the crowd still lingering outside the Bean Scene. She immediately began reviewing the growing stack of documentation Kevin had compiled, her expression growing more serious with each page. This is far beyond a single incident, she noted, highlighting sections of Sarah's employee file. We have at least 12 documented complaints of political discrimination in the past 6 months alone. She spread the papers across the back office desk, creating a timeline of escalating incidents. The security footage told an even more damaging story. Kevin had compiled clips showing Sarah's systematic discrimination, deliberately slow service for customers wearing patriotic clothing, accidentally spilling drinks ordered by people with conservative bumper stickers visible through the shop window, and markup charges secretly added to orders from customers she deemed problematic. "Look at this pattern," Kevin explained to the employment lawyer who had joined them via video call. He played a series of clips showing Sarah photographing conservative customers without consent and posting their images to social media with mocking captions. "She's been building her social media following by humiliating our customers." Local business owners began sending in their own evidence. The bookstore next door provided security camera footage of Sarah harassing their customers in the shared parking lot, targeting anyone with conservative bumper stickers or clothing. The gym across the street submitted incident reports of Sarah screaming at their members through the coffee shop windows whenever they wore political workout gear she disapproved of. Maria Rodriguez's detailed statement painted a picture of systematic harassment. Ms. Sullivan would regularly forget orders from conservative customers, claiming computer glitches. She would then offer to remake their drinks, only to deliberately prepare them incorrectly or with ingredients she knew they couldn't consume. The legal team's preliminary assessment was grim. "We're looking at multiple violations of civil rights laws," the attorney explained, "plus potential harassment charges and creation of a hostile environment. The systematic nature of the discrimination makes this particularly serious." James remained in the front of the store, calmly observing as Sarah's livestream followers began turning against her. Her attempts to paint herself as a progressive hero were backfiring as viewers pointed out the obvious discrimination in her own recorded footage. Comments flooded in calling her behavior exactly what she claims to be fighting against, and textbook bigotry. The Bean Scene's corporate office issued a preliminary statement. "We are aware of the situation and are conducting a thorough investigation into allegations of discriminatory practices. This company has zero tolerance for customer harassment of any kind." Their legal department requested copies of all security footage and employee records, moving with unusual speed. The corporate legal team's swift response sent ripples through the gathering crowd outside. News vans from local stations began arriving, their satellite dishes stretching skyward as reporters positioned themselves for live broadcast. Sarah's livestream followers, who had initially gathered in support, now shifted uncomfortably as counter-protesters wearing MAGA hats began appearing across the street. Kevin approached James quietly, clutching the property deed and ownership transfer papers. "Should I show these to her now?" he whispered, glancing nervously at Sarah, who continued ranting to her dwindling online audience about taking a stand against fascism. James shook his head. "Not yet. Document everything first." He pulled out his phone and began methodically photographing the emergency exits, now blocked by the crowd Sarah had attracted. The fire marshal would later note 3 separate safety violations caused by the impromptu protest. Inside, the shop had descended into chaos. Dirty dishes piled up as Sarah ignored her duties, focusing instead on her political crusade. A health inspector, drawn by the commotion, noted multiple violations: unattended food items, temperature control issues, and unsanitized surfaces. Each infraction was carefully logged into their official report. "This is getting dangerous," Maria Rodriguez told the police officers who had arrived to manage the growing crowd. Last week, she followed a customer to their car because they had a conservative bumper sticker. "I thought she was going to key their vehicle." Other employees began speaking up. "She makes us all uncomfortable," Jenny from the morning shift admitted to HR consultant Janet. She checks everyone's social media before deciding how to treat them. If they follow any conservative accounts, she marks their cups with special symbols so other workers know to give them bad service. The situation reached a breaking point when Sarah's activist friends began posting threats online. "We'll shut this whole place down," one wrote, sharing James's home address. Another posted photos of his family members, drawing quick action from the police cybercrimes unit. Kevin discovered a folder on the shared work computer filled with screenshots. Sarah had been tracking conservative customers' social media accounts during her shifts, building what she called her fascist database. The timestamp data proved she'd spent hours of company time on political activism, instead of her assigned duties. Local business owners gathered in the bookstore next door, discussing the impact on foot traffic. This kind of behavior drives customers away from the whole street, the bookstore owner explained. "We've lost business every time she starts one of her political crusades." The evidence continued mounting. Security footage revealed Sarah tampering with orders she deemed politically incorrect, deliberately using dairy milk for customers who requested non-dairy alternatives if she disagreed with their political views. The footage showed her smirking as she served these deliberately mishandled drinks, creating serious liability issues for the business. The security footage revelations sent shockwaves through the corporate office. Within hours, screenshots from Sarah's fascist database appeared on local news sites, sparking fierce debate about customer privacy violations. The coffee shop's Yelp page exploded with new reviews, many sharing personal stories of discrimination they'd experienced from Sarah over political differences. "I can't believe she's been tracking our social media," whispered Jenny to Maria as they watched another news van pull up outside. "Remember when she refused to make Senator Miller's coffee last month? She claimed it was because the machine was broken, but I saw her serve other customers right after." The assistant manager, Kevin, gathered statements from regular customers who had witnessed Sarah's previous politically motivated incidents. Mrs. Henderson, a retired schoolteacher, described how Sarah had loudly mocked her Blue Lives Matter pin and deliberately made her drink with extra hot milk despite requests for moderate temperature. 3 other customers reported similar experiences with modified orders after Sarah spotted their conservative-leaning bumper stickers. Local business owners continued arriving throughout the afternoon, expressing solidarity with James. "We've lost thousands in revenue whenever she starts these political stunts," said Tom Chen, owner of the neighboring bakery. "Last time she organized a sidewalk protest that blocked access to all our stores. My elderly customers couldn't even reach the door." The corporate HR team set up a temporary command center in the back office, methodically documenting each violation. Sarah's personnel file revealed multiple customer complaints that had been previously filed but dismissed as minor incidents. Now, viewed collectively, they painted a disturbing pattern of discriminatory behavior. "Look at these timestamps," Janet from HR pointed out to James. She spent an average of 3 hours per shift researching customers' political affiliations instead of working. "That's wage theft, on top of everything else." Sarah's initial supporters began quietly leaving as media coverage turned increasingly critical. Her live-stream comments section filled with former customers sharing their own experiences of political discrimination. The local Democratic Party office even released a statement distancing themselves from her actions, emphasizing that political differences shouldn't affect customer service. "I've worked here 5 years, Kevin told a reporter while carefully avoiding the cameras, "and I've never seen anything like this. We serve everyone, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. That's what business is supposed to be about." The police cybercrimes unit arrived to investigate the online threats against James's family, taking statements and collecting digital evidence. Officer Martinez documented dozens of threatening messages posted by Sarah's activist network, each one adding to the growing legal implications of her campaign against conservative customers. At her register, Sarah's defiant posture began to crack as she noticed her co-workers avoiding eye contact. The hashtag she'd created to rally support now trended with criticism, and her phone buzzed constantly with notifications from concerned friends warning her about the growing backlash. Still, she clutched her phone, desperately live-streaming to an increasingly skeptical audience about standing up to right-wing oppression, even as corporate lawyers gathered in the manager's office. James called an emergency all-staff meeting for 3 p.m., scheduling it during the afternoon lull. As employees filed into the break room, Sarah marched in with 3 friends from her activist group, phones held high to live-stream the proceedings. She positioned herself near the door, clearly expecting to dominate the conversation. "Before we begin," Kevin, the assistant manager, announced while connecting his laptop to the projector, "HR has asked me to present some concerning data." He pulled up a spreadsheet tracking customer complaints over the past 6 months. The room fell silent as graphs showed a clear spike in incidents correlating with Sarah's shifts. "On days when Sarah works, we see an average 40% drop in repeat conservative customers," Kevin explained, clicking through slides. Multiple regulars have specifically cited political discrimination as their reason for not returning. Sarah's live stream chat erupted with supportive messages, but her co-workers shifted uncomfortably as security footage began playing. The video showed Sarah refusing service to an elderly woman wearing an American flag pin, then serving the customers behind her without issue. Another clip captured her deliberately misspelling names of customers she'd identified as conservatives, writing fascist instead of Francis on one cup. "This isn't about politics," Linda from HR stated firmly, laying out a thick folder. "This is about creating a hostile environment for customers and co-workers alike." She began reading from documented incidents, unauthorized social media posts about customers, modified orders based on perceived political views, and organizing protests that blocked access to neighboring businesses. The local Chamber of Commerce representative stood up next. Several downtown businesses have reported significant revenue losses during these political demonstrations. The coffee shop alone has seen a 25% decrease in monthly sales. Sarah's friends moved closer, filming everything while making loud comments about corporate oppression, but their usual tactics fell flat as more evidence mounted. Jenny, a fellow barista, raised her hand nervously. "Sarah told me I couldn't be friends with her anymore after she saw my brother's conservative posts on my Facebook. She said I was enabling fascism by staying in contact with him." Other employees began sharing similar stories, how Sarah had created tension in their once peaceful workplace, divided their tight-knit team, and made everyone walk on eggshells. The professional environment they'd enjoyed had transformed into a political battleground under her influence. Through it all, James sat quietly at the back, taking notes while Sarah's supporters grew increasingly agitated. They tried interrupting each speaker, but Kevin calmly referred to their documented evidence, timestamp by timestamp, incident by incident. The live stream comments shifted noticeably, with viewers questioning Sarah's actions rather than supporting them. "This isn't cancel culture," the HR representative concluded. "This is accountability for creating a hostile work environment and violating multiple company policies." She gestured to the thick stack of customer complaints, social media screenshots, and security footage stills spread across the table. "We have a responsibility to ensure all customers feel welcome, regardless of their political beliefs." The meeting room grew tense as Sarah's friends huddled around her, whispering frantically while glancing at their phones. The narrative they'd tried to control was slipping away, replaced by documented facts and first-hand accounts that painted a very different picture than their social media campaign had suggested. Outside the break room window, a news van pulled into the parking lot, its satellite dish extending skyward. Sarah's supporters pressed against the glass, their protest signs creating a kaleidoscope of angry colors. Inside, James methodically arranged a stack of papers on the table, while Kevin queued up additional security footage on his laptop. "We've received statements from 17 regular customers," Linda from HR continued, spreading out notarized documents, including Maria Rodriguez, who witnessed this morning's incident. She lifted a particularly detailed account. Mrs. Rodriguez notes that Sarah specifically told her last week that conservatives weren't welcome here when she ordered wearing a Reagan t-shirt. The protest chants from outside grew louder. Through the window, Sarah's activist friends could be seen linking arms across the store entrance, preventing customers from entering. The afternoon rush hour crowd gathered on the sidewalk, phones recording the scene as the news crew set up their equipment. Our sales data shows a consistent pattern, Kevin added, projecting a new chart. We've lost approximately 40% of our regular customer base since these incidents began. The Downtown Business Association has documented a ripple effect on neighboring stores during Sarah's organized protests. Sarah's live stream continued, but her usual confident smirk had begun to falter. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications as competing hashtags trended locally, some supporting her stance, others condemning her actions. The comments section had shifted dramatically since the evidence began mounting. James stood quietly, straightening his tie as he reviewed the final pieces of documentation: property deed records, transfer of ownership papers, and the corporate ethics policy he'd helped write. The district manager's car pulled into his reserved spot outside, followed by 2 police cruisers positioning themselves strategically in the lot. Before we proceed further, Linda announced, we have several employee testimonials to review. She nodded to Jenny, who nervously stepped forward with her written statement. These detail a pattern of workplace harassment based on perceived political affiliations. Sarah's remaining supporters huddled closer to her, but their live stream comments had shifted from righteous anger to concerned warnings. Several viewers pointed out that her actions appeared to violate employment law rather than represent legitimate political protest. Through the growing chaos, James maintained his composed demeanor, carefully organizing his evidence into clear categories: policy violations, customer discrimination, revenue impact, and witness statements. The security guard positioned himself by the door as raised voices from the protest group outside echoed through the building. Sarah, Kevin said firmly, your actions have created a hostile environment that goes far beyond political expression. He gestured to the data displayed on screen. These numbers represent real people, customers and co-workers, who you've actively discriminated against. The tension in the room reached a breaking point as Sarah's phone erupted with news alerts about the gathering crowd outside. Local business owners arrived to document the impact on their establishment, while the protest group's chants grew increasingly desperate, as if they sensed their narrative slipping away. The news crew's cameras began rolling as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Their satellite truck's red recording light blinked steadily, while the reporter, Lisa Chen from Channel 7, adjusted her microphone and stepped in front of the lens. We're live outside Bean Scene Coffee, where an incident of alleged political discrimination has sparked controversy, Lisa reported, gesturing to the protesters behind her. The situation escalated this morning when a barista reportedly refused service to a customer wearing political attire. James emerged from the break room, his measured steps carrying him toward the gathered media. His calm demeanor drew their attention immediately, microphones clustering around him like metal to a magnet. Behind him, Kevin distributed printed copies of the employee handbook's non-discrimination policy to the press. Our establishment has always welcomed customers of all political beliefs, James stated firmly, his voice steady and clear. Today's incident represents a serious violation of both our company policies and state public accommodation laws. Sarah's live stream followers watched in growing dismay as screenshots of her previous social media posts filled the news ticker below Lisa's broadcast. Post after post revealed a pattern. Just kicked out another MAGA zombie. And conservatives aren't welcome in my coffee shop. The evidence mounted, each post time-stamped and authenticated. Inside, Linda from HR continued reviewing the documentation with growing concern. We have multiple incidents recorded over the past 3 months, she noted, spreading out complaint forms across the conference table. Each one shows a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior based on perceived political affiliation. The local business association president, Margaret Wu, arrived with additional documentation. Surrounding businesses have logged a 30% decrease in foot traffic during Sarah's previous political demonstrations, she explained, presenting charts and witness statements. This affects our entire downtown community. Sarah's activist group's numbers had dwindled as the afternoon wore on. Several former supporters quietly deleted their protest photos from social media as legal experts appeared on the news broadcast, discussing civil rights implications and potential lawsuits. The law is clear on this matter, Attorney Michael Rodriguez explained on camera. Political discrimination in public accommodations can result in significant legal consequences for both employees and businesses. Inside the break room, Kevin projected security footage showing multiple incidents of Sarah confronting customers wearing conservative-themed clothing. The timestamp on each video corresponded perfectly with the customer complaints, creating an undeniable timeline of discriminatory behavior. Sarah's phone continued buzzing, but now with notifications of unfollows and angry comments. Her live stream chat filled with legal professionals pointing out workplace violations, while former supporters distanced themselves from her actions. The carefully constructed narrative she'd built began crumbling under the weight of mounting evidence. Through it all, James maintained his professional composure, methodically working with HR to document every aspect of the situation. The all-staff meeting notice for the following morning sat ready on his desk, its implications heavy with the knowledge of what would unfold when his true position as owner became known. Outside, two competing groups began gathering. Local conservative supporters organizing a peaceful rally, while Sarah's remaining activists attempted to maintain their protest. Police officers calmly established boundaries between the groups, their presence a reminder of the growing seriousness of the situation. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as James took his position at the head of the conference room table. Sarah sat rigid in her chair, her earlier bravado diminished by the weight of evidence folders stacked before her. The HR representative opened the first file while the legal team queued up security footage on the wall-mounted screen. "Before we begin reviewing the documented incidents," James said calmly, placing his ownership papers on the table, "I want to clarify my position as Bean Scene's new owner." Sarah's face drained of color as the implications hit her. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. "Over the past week, we've gathered extensive evidence of policy violations," James continued, nodding to Kevin, who began distributing packets to everyone present. "This includes multiple instances of customer discrimination, unauthorized social media broadcasts during work hours, and creating a hostile environment for both customers and staff." The security footage played silently on the screen, showing a pattern of Sarah's selective service refusals. Her live stream posts appeared next, each one contradicting company policies she'd signed and acknowledged during training. "Given the severity and pattern of these violations," the HR representative stated, "Bean Scene has no choice but to terminate your employment effective immediately." James held up his hand as Sarah started to protest. "Additionally, our legal team has prepared a settlement agreement requiring a public statement acknowledging your discriminatory actions. You'll find the terms on page 3. Later that afternoon, James stood before his assembled staff, introducing new company-wide training programs on customer service and political neutrality. Bean Scene will be an example of how businesses can serve everyone with dignity and respect, he announced, as local news cameras rolled. In the weeks that followed, the coffee shop saw a surge in customer diversity. Regular patrons commented on the improved atmosphere, and other local businesses began adopting similar anti-discrimination policy. The Chamber of Commerce recognized James with their annual leadership award for his handling of the crisis. 6 months later, James established the Bean Scene Scholarship for Business Ethics, funding students committed to studying professional conduct and inclusive service practices. The shop's new training program became a model for other businesses, while Sarah's cautionary tale appeared in management textbooks as an example of professionalism prevailing over political activism. "We're not just serving coffee," James told a Business Journal interviewer, watching customers of all political persuasions chatting amicably in his shop. "We're serving our community by showing how everyday respect transforms neighborhoods." Outside, the shop's window displayed a new sign: "All welcome here. No exception." Inside, the diverse mix of customers and happy staff proved that professional standards and personal dignity could indeed transcend political divisions, one cup of coffee at a time.